You wake before the slaves. The marble is still cold. Somewhere beyond the palace walls, the city of Rome sleeps, unaware that when dawn breaks, it will have a different emperor. Or no emperor at all? You pull yourself from the thin mattress where concubines rest between summons, and your hands are shaking because tonight you did something that cannot be undone. You poisoned the most powerful man in the world. And now you are waiting in the dark, listening for footsteps, listening for screams, listening for any sound that tells you whether he is dying or whether you are about to die instead. The cup sits empty on the marble floor, the wine is gone, and somewhere in this palace Emperor Commodus is fighting for his life while you sit here, trapped between two endings, neither of them merciful. This is Rome. December 31st, 192 A.D. The year is dying, and so is the emperor. But to understand why a concubine, a chamberlain, and the head of the Praetorian Guard are about to commit the most dangerous act in the empire, you need to understand what this man did with 12 years of absolute power. You need to see what turned loyalty into desperation and silence into murder. Most people know Commodus from the movie Gladiator. Joaquin Phoenix gave us a version of cruelty that could fit on a screen, a villain we could watch for 2 hours and walk away from. But the real Commodus was not a character. He was a catastrophe. And what he did behind the palace walls, in the arenas, in the temples, in the private chambers where no historian was allowed to witness, was so grotesque that even the Romans who survived him struggled to write it down without their hands trembling. There is a story recorded by the historian Herodian about a boy, 11 years old, who stepped into his bath one afternoon and found the water lukewarm, not cold, not scalding, just slightly less than perfect. The boy did not complain to a servant. He did not ask for it to be reheated. He ordered the man responsible thrown alive into the furnace that heated the bath water. The servants knew this child did not yet have the authority to execute anyone. His father, Marcus Aurelius, was still emperor, still alive, still the most respected philosopher-ruler in the known world. But they also knew something else. One day this boy would have that authority, and when that day came, he would remember who obeyed and who hesitated. So they improvised. Before we go any further, drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching this. It genuinely amazes me that a story this dark, this ancient, still pulls us in from every continent. History doesn't fade, it echoes. They took lambskins, threw them into the furnace, let the wool catch fire, let the fat crackle and spit and fill the corridor with the smell of burning flesh. The boy paused in his bath. He inhaled. He nodded to himself, satisfied that the problem had been handled, and sank deeper into the water. He believed a man had just died screaming because his bath was not hot enough, and the only emotion he felt was relief that the inconvenience had been resolved. That boy was Commodus, and that moment was not the beginning of his cruelty. It was the revelation of something already fully formed, waiting patiently for the day when no one would throw lambskins into the fire to protect the people around him. Marcus Aurelius spent his life writing about discipline, virtue, the mastery of destructive impulses. He hired the greatest philosophers in the empire to educate his son. He brought him on military campaigns, hoping the weight of command would temper him. None of it worked. Cassius Dio, the senator and historian who lived through everything that followed, wrote that Marcus Aurelius had only one source of unhappiness in his entire reign. After educating his son in the best possible way, He was deeply disappointed in him. When Marcus Aurelius died in 180 A.D., his son was 19, and from that day forward there were no more lambskins, no more pretending. No one left to stand between Rome and what he really was. Commodus did not want to govern. He wanted to be worshipped. He genuinely believed he was the reincarnation of Hercules, the demigod who strangled serpents in his crib and completed 12 impossible labors. He commissioned a new head for the Colossus of Nero, the 100-foot statue that loomed over the city, and replaced it with his own face, sculpted to resemble Hercules. He renamed the city of Rome Colonia Commodiana. He renamed the Senate. He renamed the months of the year. He declared himself a living god and demanded the empire treat him as one. But declarations were not enough. Gods proved themselves, and the place Commodus chose to prove his divinity was the arena. He fought in the Colosseum more than 700 times. Every fight was rigged. His opponents entered with wooden weapons, or no weapons at all. Some were drugged, some were chained. Some were pulled from the streets that morning and handed a stick. Commodus fought with real steel against men designed to lose, and he charged the Roman treasury 1 million sesterces for each appearance. 700 million sesterces drained from an empire that was already crumbling at the edges, bleeding resources into wars it could no longer afford. But the money was not the worst part. The worst part was what the senators had to do. Commodus forced every senator, every general, every man of rank to attend his fights. They sat in the front rows of the Colosseum, and they were required to chant. Not cheer, chant. Specific words rehearsed, mandatory, the same lines repeated until their throats went raw. Cassius Dio, who was there, recorded the exact phrase they were forced to scream. You are Lord, you are first of all men. Most fortunate of all men, you win, and you will win. From everlasting Amazonian, you win. Think about what that means. You are a senator of Rome. You have commanded legions. You have governed provinces with millions of people under your authority. And now you are sitting in the front row of the Colosseum, your voice cracking, sweat running down your face, screaming praise at a man who is beating a chained, drugged opponent with a club while dressed as Hercules. And you know that if the emperor glances at you and your mouth is not moving, if your enthusiasm does not look convincing enough, your name goes on a list. And people on lists do not survive the week. This happened 700 times over 12 years. But the rigged gladiator fights were not enough for Commodus. He needed something more grotesque, something that would cement his image as a mythological hero walking among mortals. He ordered soldiers to gather disabled men from the streets of Rome, men who had lost their legs in accidents, men who could barely crawl. He had serpent tails attached to the stumps of their limbs to make them resemble the mythical giants Hercules fought in the old stories. Then he armed them with sponges, not rocks, not wooden clubs, sponges. Commodus entered the arena dressed in a lion skin, carrying a massive club, the full costume of Hercules reborn. And he beat these men to death, one by one, in front of 50,000 spectators, who roared with applause because silence was not an option. The emperor had already shown them what happens to people who do not cheer loudly enough. One afternoon, during another spectacle, Commodus killed an ostrich by severing its head with a single stroke. The neck was long. The blood was still dripping when he picked up the head and walked slowly toward the tribune, where the most powerful senators of Rome were seated. One by one he held the bleeding ostrich head inches from their faces. He did not say a word. He just stared, grinning, searching their eyes for any flicker of disgust, any sign of fear, any hint that they were anything other than completely devoted to their god-emperor. Cassius Dio was sitting in that tribune. He saw the blood. He smelled it. And he wrote later that he tore a piece of laurel from the crown on his head and shoved it into his mouth, chewing desperately because his body was about to betray him. He did not know whether he was going to laugh, scream, or vomit, but he knew that whatever emotion appeared on his face would kill him. So he chewed a leaf and survived another day. The arena was the public face of Commodus' madness. What happened behind the palace walls was the private face, and it was so much worse. Inside the imperial palace, there were 600 people assembled from every level of Roman society. 300 women, 300 young men, senators' wives standing beside women pulled from the streets. Inside those walls, every distinction vanished. Everyone wore the same thing. Everyone served the same function. Everyone was property. The historian Lampridius documented what life looked like inside that palace. Commodus did not govern. He did not read reports or attend council meetings. His advisors ran the empire, while the emperor spent his days in the baths and his nights in the banquet halls, surrounded by people who existed for one purpose: to be used. Every night, Commodus ordered his own concubines taken by other men while he watched, not from behind a curtain, not discreetly. He sat close and observed, because this was not about desire. It was a ritual of dominance, a nightly performance designed to remind every person in that room that they did not own their own bodies. He did. Think about what that does to a person. Not one night, not 1 week. Years of existing in a place where your body is not yours, where the man who controls your life treats you like furniture that breathes. And it was not just the women. He pushed his praetorian prefect, a man named Julianus, into a swimming pool while the man wore his full formal toga in front of his entire staff. Then he ordered him to strip naked and dance before the concubines, clashing cymbals like a performer at a festival. The head of the emperor's security, standing there with nothing on, humiliated, performing, while everyone watched, and no one could say a word. Commodus grabbed real scalpels and cut into living people. Not enemies, not prisoners, people in his household. He watched the blood pour from the wounds with genuine fascination, as if he were conducting an experiment. Some of his victims bled to death on the table while he stood over them, observing. Lampridius described it plainly. He went so far as to bleed men to death with scalpels, calling it practicing medicine. It was cruelty dressed in a physician's costume. He bathed 8 times a day, ate his meals in the water surrounded by concubines, and walked into the sacred temples of Rome, places where Roman citizens went to pray, still carrying the stain of the previous night. Lampridius wrote that he entered these temples defiled with excess and human blood. This was the daily reality inside the palace, and the people trapped inside it had no exit, no appeal, no voice. They existed in silence because silence was the only thing that kept them alive. If you have made it this far, you understand why every person in that palace wanted this man dead. Subscribe if you have not, because what he did to his own family comes next, and it is the moment when even the historians who recorded his reign had to pause and choose their words carefully. In 182 A.D., 2 years into his reign, Commodus' sister Lucilla sent a man to kill him. The assassin hid in the shadows of the Colosseum with a dagger. The plan was simple. Strike fast, strike silent, disappear into the crowd. But the assassin lunged too early and shouted as he attacked, "This is what the Senate sends to you." Those words gave the guards time to react. The assassin was killed on the spot. Commodus survived, and something inside him broke permanently. Lucilla, the woman who had once been Empress of Rome, was sent to the island of Capri. Months later, a guard arrived on that island with orders from her brother. She was executed. The woman who had been empress, who had lived in the palace, who had shared the same father, died alone, far from everything she had known. But killing Lucilla was not enough for a man like Commodus. The Historia Augusta, one of the most controversial sources on Roman emperors, records what he did next in language so carefully chosen that even now historians debate what it truly means. Commodus turned to his remaining sisters, daughters of Marcus Aurelius, women raised by philosophers, women of imperial blood, and he corrupted them. The text does not elaborate. It does not need to. This was not desire. It was calculation. A message delivered through the bodies of his own family, a statement to every person in Rome. There is no bond I will not break, no line I will not cross. If I will do this to my own sisters, imagine what I will do to you. Then he took a concubine and named her after his own mother, Faustina. The woman in his bed was given the name of the woman who gave him life, a deliberate blurring of every boundary that separates a functioning human mind from something else entirely. His wife was next. Rucia Crispina had survived 10 years beside him. 10 years of watching other women enter the palace and disappear. 10 years of silence, obedience, and fear. Then one morning he accused her of adultery. No witnesses, no trial, no defense. The accusation was the verdict. She was sent to Capri, the same island, the same fate, executed. After Crispina, the paranoia consumed everything. Senators were dragged from their homes at night, their heads mounted on pikes along the roads, their bodies thrown into the Tiber. He exterminated the entire Quintili family, men, women, children, the name erased. He killed his cousin, Vitracia Faustina. He ordered the execution of dozens of men who merely resembled a fugitive he was hunting. Their only crime was having the wrong face at the wrong time. For 12 years this was the pattern, a cycle of suspicion and death that consumed everyone who got close. No one was safe. No one was exempt. Until the night a woman named Marcia found her name on a list and decided she had survived long enough. Picture this moment. A young servant, a boy named Commodus, one of the emperor's favorites, picks up a wooden tablet lying on a table in the palace. He does not know what it is. He is just a child. He glances at the names written on it and does not understand. But he knows Marcia. Everyone knows Marcia. She has been the emperor's concubine for nearly 10 years, longer than anyone else has survived in that position. So the boy brings the tablet to her, thinking maybe she dropped it, maybe she is looking for it. Marcia takes the tablet. She reads the first line. Her name. She keeps reading. Eclectus, the chamberlain. Letus, the head of the Praetorian Guard. A list of people to be executed at dawn. 3 names. 3 people who, until this moment, believed they were indispensable. Marcia stares at the tablet, and the air in the room changes. She has minutes to decide, because when Commodus steps out of his bath tonight and sees the fear in her eyes, the trembling in her hands when she pours his wine, he will know, and she will be dead before sunrise. She finds Letus. She finds Eclectus. She shows them the tablet. Letus stares at his name. He is the head of the Praetorian Guard, the most powerful military position in the empire. He has seen what happens to people on these lists: heads on pikes, bodies in the river, families destroyed. He knows there is no version of tomorrow where he survives if that list reaches the executioners. Eclectus reads his name and says nothing. He has served Commodus for years. He knows every corridor of this palace, every secret passage, every guard rotation. He also knows that when Commodus decides someone is a threat, there is no appeal, no negotiation, only death. 3 people, 1 list, 1 decision, and no time. Marcia knows this man better than anyone alive. She has poured his wine every night for 10 years. She knows that after his bath he drinks always the same ritual he never skips. Tonight that ritual becomes a weapon. She prepares the wine the same way she always does. Same cup, same pour. But tonight she adds something. Poison. The kind you keep hidden for exactly this kind of moment. Because when you live beside a man like Commodus, you learn to prepare for the night when your name appears on a list. The emperor steps out of his bath. He is in a good mood. Tomorrow is his day, the day he walks into the arena as a gladiator and shows Rome who he really is. Marcia hands him the cup. He takes it from her hands the way he has 1,000 times before. He drinks. Within minutes his stomach contracts. Color drains from his face. He vomits violently, his body fighting to purge the poison. 12 years of arena combat, of training, of playing Hercules, have built something a single dose cannot kill. He's on the floor now, shaking, convulsing, but not dying. And that's when fear hits Marcia like ice water. If he survives the night, she will not see the morning. None of them will. The purge will be absolute friends, families, anyone whose name he can remember through rage. Word is sent to Narcissus, the emperor's wrestling partner, a man who has grappled with him hundreds of times, a man who knows exactly how strong he is and how weak he is now. He's offered a fortune. He accepts. The palace corridors are empty, the guards reassigned, only retching behind a closed door. Inside, the most powerful man in the world lies helpless on cold marble. Commodus, who believed he was Hercules, who renamed Rome after himself, who slaughtered men for applause, cannot stand. Narcissus closes his hands around the emperor's throat. Commodus understands instantly. He claws weakly, but the strength that killed lions is gone. The man who forced the Senate to worship him cannot scream. Seconds later, he's dead. December 31st, 192 A.D., 31 years old. A god dying like every man powerless. The Senate does not mourn. They erase his name. Statues fall. Arenas are renamed. Rome becomes Rome again, but stability does not return. Pertinax lasts 86 days. 5 emperors rise and fall within a year. And Marcia? Executed in 193 A.D. No statue. No honor. The empire moves on. But for one night an entire empire was freed, not by an army or a crown, but by a woman with no power, no title, and a single cup of wine.